We heard reports that the Vikings were interested in Aaron Rodgers, even though they have McCarthy on the roster. Kevin O'Connell addressed those reports, saying Rodgers was at a point in his career where he was free to have a real dialogue about his future. The Vikings head coach was sure to add he feels very strongly J.J. McCarthy is ready to go to work and make a positive impact. I don't know why the Vikings keep talking about Aaron Rodgers. It cannot be good for J.J. McCarthy's mental health.
I think a lot of it's tied to his rehab. He had that second surgery in like November. I think a lot of it's tied to that.
Yeah, it's March now, buddy. It's been like 6 months.
Well, it's maybe they're a little.
He's got to be your guy. Imagine if, I'm your guy, you like me. You're just hyping up someone else in the media who wants my spot. How would I feel?
That's why I'm on the phone all afternoon.
Interesting. And then, you ghost me when I talked to you about the Rockets-Lakers last night. Interesting. Okay. I guess I got to look out for
Dude, I called you twice this weekend, and you're at some...
I was coaching. I got some stuff going on. Yeah. We'll catch up soon. The wife's in town. You want to get together?
Okay. We can't really call that a Viking segment if you just, say a couple sentences and then start talking about, your personal life. But, so I'll address it, and I'll get a little bit more flattering pause screen. Because we don't... There we go. So I actually think J Mac actually brought up a good point, in terms of why do you keep talking about Aaron Rodgers? I do think there was some real interest in potentially signing Aaron Rodgers. That was a real conversation that the Vikings themselves admitted to having, and I get that. And I know there's still some apparent rumors that Aaron Rodgers could still be going to the Minnesota Vikings. Whether that's true or not, who really knows at this point? But like I said, we do know without a shadow of a doubt, because the Minnesota Vikings said it, that yeah, we had conversations about Aaron Rodgers. But I do agree that it is kind of a misstep to kind of continue this conversation now. You don't have to keep telling everyone that you believe in J.J. McCarthy. And now Colin said something about, they were kind of concerned about his injury, about his surgery and stuff like that. And that seems to be a very sensitive topic for Minnesota Vikings fans that I've noticed based on their comments in the comments section. And Colin's not just randomly saying that, because he is saying that based off of real insider conversations that he's had. That there was legitimate concerns about JJ McCarthy's health, that this routine meniscus surgery did not just heal and just be fine. And again, having a follow-up surgery, because everyone loves to debate whether it was a cleanup surgery, whether it was this, whether it was that. It's all not routine. It's never routine to get a meniscus repair and then have a follow-up procedure. And no, it was not just an injection. It was a legitimate surgery. And again, that's how you know it's bizarre, because everyone keeps kind of changing their tune what it is. There should be zero need for a cleanup surgery, or even an exploratory surgery, just to make sure that there's no extra issues. That's not how it works. That's just not. I've had the surgery 3 times with incredibly high level surgeons who do surgeries on athletes, professional athletes, NFL, NHL, etc., NBA, etc., etc. I've been very fortunate in that regard from the medical treatment that I've personally received. And so it's never routine. In fact, they specifically do not want to do that, because you're digging back into the knee, even if it's, the tiny little arthroscopic. It's still trauma into your knee. So it's any type of surgical procedure is always the last option. Always the last option. And so that obviously was concerning to enough people within the Minnesota Vikings organization. And now, like J-Max saying, well, listen, dude, it's March. This was all done in November. This is months ago. And I agree with that. Which is why this story was always kind of muddled. From many different directions, because first it was kind of Sam Darnold, they had a lot of success. I think they're going to want to keep Sam Darnold. And then it was Sam Darnold's leaving. They couldn't get him at the right price. And so then he went on to Seattle, and they're like, well, now Aaron Rodgers is interested. And that conversation with Aaron Rodgers lingered a lot longer than it needed to if the Minnesota Vikings weren't interested. Like that was literally and they were staying silent, which that silence becomes deafening at that point. And so the reports and the conversations got all, muddled rather quickly. And now it feels like, to a degree, the Minnesota Vikings are trying to kind of sweep up the footprints that they left behind and be like, no, JJ's our guy, like, let's go. But I disagree with what J Mac is saying of like, oh, how hard is this for JJ and McCarthy and this, that. Like, not hard at all. I think JJ is a very intelligent person, seems to be incredibly mature, very grounded. He's going to understand that they're talking about Aaron Rodgers. He's not dumb. He knows that's Aaron Rodgers. Of course, if Aaron Rodgers is available, no matter how good I am, I'm a rookie. I've never stepped foot on a football field. Of course, they're going to have that conversation. Can I be frustrated by it? Can I be annoyed by it? Can I even be sad by it? Of course. But it's not going to hurt my ego or hurt my level of confidence, because it's literally Aaron Rodgers. Like, that makes sense. And even watching Sam Darnold, the fact that they would consider keeping Sam Darnold, that also makes sense. These are athletes who have been around the block. They played. These are lessons that you learn even when you're in middle school. For the first time that you actually try out for like a school team, which would typically be like middle school, like, you're going to understand, like, that's the way it works. Even if you've been that guy the whole time, even if you've always been the starter and the star, you still like at least understand. You might not as intimately know if you haven't been benched before, or if you've made a team and you're not starting, but typically when you're a quarterback in that regard, I mean, I don't really know what his high school trajectory was, but it's not hard to imagine that he was on the team and wasn't officially the starter just yet until he got a little bit older. But honestly, I don't know how he was growing up in terms of what he was like in middle school and high school and stuff. But it's still typically lessons that you're going to learn, because like I said, especially through sports, like a lot of times you're playing with multiple ages, so the older kids are just going to be better than you. So it's just lessons you learn. You just understand. And again, if JJ McCarthy had this like massive ego and was delusional, and I got the feeling of like, I don't know if he really doesn't have a lot in, doesn't seem really mature to me, well then yes, I could understand that. I could understand, we kind of have to baby him a little bit, or we have to be really careful here. I don't get that feeling from JJ. In fact, I feel like JJ is one of those people that you can keep putting things on his plate and he'll manage it, pretty well. Is he going to be perfect? No, because he's, was 21, just turned 22. And so that you do have to keep that in the awareness. But again, we don't have to make these players more fragile than they are in real life, especially when some of the things that we want to use to evaluate a quarterback, like maturity, we're allowed to kind of, elevate that in moments like this. And so I really don't see that concern, and I don't even see the need to even publicly keep saying how much you support JJ McCarthy. Say it a couple times, and then you just move on. But again, unfortunately, because of how everything unfolded, because Sam Darnold balled out, because there was legitimate conversations about keeping Sam Darnold, and then there was legitimate conversations about keeping Aaron Rodgers, the fact that JJ McCarthy unfortunately got injured, needed some sort of follow-up procedure, it just added to a more muddled feeling surrounding all of this. Like I said, it would be confidence shaking if like Baker Mayfield was available, if Dak Prescott was available, if Kirk Cousins is actually probably the best example. If they were like, if there was like reports, and I know obviously Kirk Cousins played with the Minnesota Vikings, but let's just pretend in this situation he never did. And so we're just looking at Kirk in this like isolation, in a vacuum. And there was like real reports that Kevin O'Connell was interested, or the Vikings in general were interested in Kirk Cousins. Like, yeah, then you start to kind of be like, there must have some real question marks around JJ McCarthy. And what is this now doing for his confidence? That Kirk Cousins, who got benched with the Atlanta Falcons, who Michael Penix, another rookie, took his job, the Minnesota Vikings are interested in. Then you would really be able to be like, this feels weird. But Sam Darnold was already with the Vikings, balled out. And then same thing, now you have Aaron Rodgers, who's like obviously multiple levels above a Kirk Cousins type player. You're just like, okay. It's hard not to think about like, if we could just get like 80% of Aaron Rodgers, man, like that's still legit. And we have a great team. Like you start to do the math, And I do think that the Vikings ultimately are in this tough situation where they have an awesome roster, an awesome coaching staff, And, you know, they had a tremendous amount of success this last season, and they really are just a quarterback away, potentially, from legitimately being Super Bowl contenders. And to drop essentially a rookie, a first-year starter with zero NFL experience in that environment, it's a tough one, because you know that quarterback is going to have his struggles. And you're just kind of like, we could legitimately win a Super Bowl. If you give the Minnesota Vikings like a top 10 quarterback, dare I say top 5 quarterback, they are legitimately top Super Bowl contenders. Not just the general, like, oh yeah, they can contend. Like legitimate, like they would probably skyrocket. Seriously, if they got like, I don't want to use any names specifically because it'll be too extreme examples. I'm just trying to really drive home the point. Like, that's how much people believe in this coaching staff and this roster. And so, again, it's not to say that JJ McCarthy can't lead this team or be great with this team, but it is a question and a riddle, quite frankly, that Kevin O'Connell and the Vikings have to kind of wrestle with and solve and try to figure out, you know, all right, we know how great this roster is. We know that if we have a really experienced high-level quarterback, like a Super Bowl is legitimately in our grasp. But unfortunately, now we're going to have to put a first-year starting quarterback in the NFL. What does that do now for our chances? What does that do for us? It just changes things. So I feel like that's also why this conversation continues. If nobody really believed how good if the Minnesota Vikings last year won like 10 games and then lost the first round, or, you know, they had a year like the Atlanta Falcons or something, it's not a big conversation. The conversation keeps lingering because that's how much belief there is in the Minnesota Vikings. So it's a good problem to have in a lot of ways. But those are just my thoughts. I'd absolutely love to hear yours. What do you guys all think about the Minnesota Vikings and JJ McCarthy and some of the lingering Aaron Rodgers, conversations surrounding it? Let me know in the comments below. I read every single comment, so whether you agree with me or disagree with me, either way, let's get in some discussions, let's get in some fights, but ultimately, let's just have some fun. And please do consider subscribing. We are building an amazing community here, and I'd absolutely love to see you part of it. I want to build something that we all genuinely feel connected to. Something that we're really excited to be part of. I think we're well on our way to doing it. And please don't forget to give this video a thumbs up, as it really does help the visibility and the algorithm. Thank you so much. See you next time.